I've been speaking on a number of different topics related to marriage and couples, and as well as dating um, advice. This session today is a difficult one. It's about affairs in a marriage and how to survive or work through those, if that has been your experience, and how to kind of come out on the other side of it in really a better place than you did prior. This is Gary from Strong Grow Oregon in Salem, and again we're covering affairs today. Now, about I would say half of my practice of seeing couples is struggling with this topic of having affairs. I don't know what the general trend for marriage counselors are in that regard, but I know it's a fairly common occurrence. It is. I'll just be open and honest. It's very, very difficult to treat, and it really depends on the desire of both people in the couple, whether they really want to see it through. It can be a long and difficult process, but well worth it, as of course divorce and separation can be very difficult on both people as well as the kids if there's any involved. So let's start in on the topic. We might have to spend several sessions on this topic because it's again such an important one. So when there's an affair, usually, obviously, somebody gets caught and or confesses, and the other one, usually, in my experience, says we're either going to go to marriage counseling, or I'm leaving, and this is not going to go on any further. And there's a lot of big emotions and anger, and so the couple calls and comes in, and they're often just having a really difficult time. The most kind of common thing that happens when they first arrive is that the person that has not had the affair, the other spouse, is usually the woman in most cases, but has been really hypervigilant in the last couple of months prior to coming in, tracking where their spouse might be, and looking at their phone and their computer records and email, trying to get to the bottom of what might have happened and when it happened, and how truthful their spouse is to them at that point. I would say, first of all, that is not productive, but certainly understandable. Logically, that's of course what you'd want to do. You want to verify everything, make sure there's no further communication, and see the extent and the duration of the affair or affairs. It certainly makes sense. I haven't seen that work well, to be honest with you. It just causes really more frustration for the victim, in this case the woman, because she's constantly involved in trying to determine where her spouse is and what they're doing. So I would really recommend to the women or men in that case to not do that, to not take the time or the energy to spy or review emails or be the accountability partner in that process for their husband in this case. So I know that's really hard. At the end of the process of counseling and going through a variety of steps to rebuild a marriage, you will find, if your spouse is not cooperative in restoring the marriage, the spouse, I mean, that has had the affair, you will find out, and through the counseling process, usually, and other things, and you could make a determination then to end the marriage, saying that your spouse has not been truthful during the process, and your that kind of the last bridge has been burned, and and you won't return to the marriage, and that's your choice at that point. Usually, if you're watching the video or in counseling, you're trying, both of you hopefully, to save the marriage and to work through the affair if possible. But I have found that you know, I don't want to use the word spying, but looking at emails and text messages of your spouse that has had an affair, I haven't found that to help marriages. In other words, I haven't seen that when people do that, their marriage usually recovers any better than when they don't do that, for sure. And maybe even, in my opinion, makes it worse in the end. So try not to do that. I'm really advising you against that. Counseling for at least 8 weeks, that's weekly sessions for 8 weeks or 2 months, is definitely the minimum that you want to do when rebuilding your marriage. If, in other words, if one or both of you cannot make it to the 8-week mark, it's likely that the marriage won't be saved at that point. And the reason for that is if people, either the victim of the affair, the spouse that didn't have the affair, or the spouse that did have the affair, won't make it weekly to sessions for 8 weeks, their likelihood of being committed to a longer process is really low. So typically couples are in counseling if there's been an affair for many months, for sure. I haven't found too many couples making it to a year, but there have been some, for sure. And I have even a couple, the longest couple I think I've probably ever seen is coming on maybe 2 years of therapy. But again, much preferable to divorce and the tragic effects that could have. So if that takes you that long to work through it, then that is totally fine. So the couple begins counseling hopefully at some point in the process, and next time I'd like to talk to you more about what are the specific things you can be doing as you start marriage counseling to make sure your marriage moves toward a healthy end. One thing that's really important, and I'll leave you with this, is the person that had the affair, they are often asked by their spouse to go to some kind of recovery group or a men's or women's group that they could share their experience with, and that would be fine. There's nothing out there that says that that's going to make things worse, but it likely won't help. I mean, maybe in the long run, but the only thing that's, not the only thing that's important, but the critical aspect of this whole thing is that the husband or the person that had the affair can be honest with their spouse about their viewing habits, their how they view affairs in general or relationships. And we'll get to more of that next time. Because it's been shown that men can, for example, share their struggles with pornography or having affairs or meeting women in groups of other men quite well, and but it doesn't have much of an impact on their affair itself. In other words, they can continue having an affair and continue to share it with a group of men, and the only thing that'll stop that is when they share it with their wives. If they can be honest with their wives about their struggles, they're more likely to stay committed to the relationship. So I'll leave you with that, and we'll take it up again next time. Bye-bye.